Hi, everyone. I am Colleen Bradley from Evolve Security, and I want to thank all of you for joining us today for our live Privilege Escalation Lab with Cody Walker. So for all of our veterans out there in the audience today, I do want to say thank you all for your service, and I hope you had a great Veterans Day last week. Before we begin, I'm just going to do a quick overview of Evolve Security. So Evolve Security is a technical cybersecurity services firm dedicated to helping businesses improve their security posture where they are the most vulnerable. We provide services including network and application penetration testing, Darwin Attack, which is a real-time pen test platform, as well as advisory services and dedicated resources. And we are also home to Evolve Academy, which is consistently ranked as the #1 cyber training in the world. And we are currently accepting Academy applications for our 20-week cybersecurity bootcamp cohort beginning on January 30th, 2023. So now just a few reminders before the event. We are recording this event and it will be available later today on our Evolve Security website under videos and via email as well. So during the lab, you can use the chat box that should be opened and you can help each other out. You can add commentary, tips, just chat with your fellow attendees in there. But if you do have specific questions for Cody during the lab, put those in the Q&A box. Let's see what else here. So if you're having any technical issues in the beginning of the lab, please message me or Eddie Hartman directly, and we'll get those all figured out for you. So with that, after all of that housekeeping, we are going to start the event. We're going to do a quick Q&A with Cody so that you can all get to know him before jumping into the lab. And while we're doing this, please feel free to log onto CyberLAB now so that you can access the lab and just go add that free Meetup course. So yeah, Cody, thank you so much for being with us today. We're super excited to have you.
Thanks. It's a real pleasure to be here. I love any chance I get to be involved with Evolve again.
Yay, awesome. Okay, so before we even talk about how you're involved with Evolve, to start off, can you give us just a little bit of background on your experience in the Army? What did you do? How long were you there? Just talk a little bit about that.
Of course. So I joined the Army in 2009. It's so long ago. Sometimes I have to think about that date again. And I spent close to 7 years in as an Army infantryman. I was airborne, so I travel. I got stationed in Fort Polk, Louisiana. Absolutely terrible. Anybody here in the Army who has done JRTC rotation can definitely attest to that. And then I got stationed in Italy with the 173rd Airborne, where I deployed to Afghanistan with that unit for right around 9 months. And then following that, ended up getting stationed in Fort Bliss. Was in the recon platoon there, and I think that's where I relate a lot of my experiences in cybersecurity, kind of with the same work I was doing in a recon platoon. And it's just like from a different angle though. So it's been really interesting, but it's great.
Yeah, you've been all over. That's awesome. And so then, and then after you were in the Army, you went into social work, right?
Yeah, after the military, it was one of those times where, being a grunt or an infantryman in the military, it's like a whole different experience. You have one job, one mission to focus on. And then, deploying to Afghanistan, I ran into some things that I personally struggled with. And when I found out about social workers, started communicating with social workers, I was just blown away. So used the GI Bill to at first get a bachelor's degree in social work, and I loved it. The kind of personal and professional development that I had going through that program, and a real confidence builder in my intellectual ability as well. Ironically though, as I was going through my master's degree, there was enough self-development to know that maybe social work, as much as it helped me develop as a person, it wasn't something that I believe I could do professionally with 100% of, and that is what you would need to do to really benefit the clients the most.
Right. Go ahead.
I did spend some time even after my degree as a social worker working with veterans experiencing homelessness for the most part for about a year. And that's actually where I found out about cybersecurity in general is attending conferences and for programs that are helping veterans find employment. And one of those programs involves cybersecurity. And that one talk like lit the fire that started everything else.
Right. It like lit that light bulb in your head.
Yeah, exactly.
So then when did you come to Evolve and get involved with us?
So it was near the end of my year mark working, and it was right during the pandemic too. So like right after that pandemic started, I couldn't leave the job I was at because it was just like we got swamped, and I felt a responsibility to the clients I had been working with. So I was able to, however, attend Evolve Security Academy's boot camp at night. So I'd work all day, and then at night I would just, study so hard. I put a lot of hours in extracurricular into Evolve too. And I remember during Evolve, I ended up getting my Network Plus certification, maybe like month 2 or something. And I was more excited about getting Network Plus than I was my master's degree. Like I was just such an achievement that I worked so hard for to get. And then, I actually got to share that moment with Eddie. We went to the same cohort.
Oh, that's awesome. It's great to like go through it with someone. Okay, so then after your time at Evolve, what you obviously are in the industry now. So can you talk a little bit about what you do now? And the job search is something that is extremely overwhelming for a lot of students. So can you talk a little bit about your experience with that and then how you landed the role that you're in now?
Absolutely. So I came in with a plan. There was actually a sort of apprenticeship program that the state of North Carolina had going with the Department of Commerce. So I spent about close to a year there working as a cybersecurity analyst shortly after Evolve. And that's where like the actual experience that really helped me. Because after you get like a year or 2 of experience, the job search is 100% easier. It's that first year. But there, that's where I really worked with like tools like CrowdStrike, EDMs, and things like that to really get introduced to full-time using those tools. Evolve though had prepared me with I had such a wide depth of knowledge leaving Evolve. I mean, of course, there's areas that I needed improvement in, but compared to some of the peers I had worked with, I think what the stuff I dabbled in and Evolve was wider than the areas that they were concentrated on. I will say communication and networking is one of the biggest. It sucks to hear it sometimes because like not everybody likes to do it. I don't like to get on LinkedIn and kind of post random things and chat with people all the time, but it is seriously such a big help trying to get that first job.
100%.
And
Go ahead.
I was gonna say I may have gotten off topic there. I just like have a lot of stuff I like to share with people sometimes.
No, I mean, we could spend a whole hour chatting about this stuff. But just to wrap this all up, right, bring it back home before we go into the lab. We have a lot of veterans out there in the audience today. So if you could provide some specific advice and or resources for veterans specifically looking to get into cybersecurity, what would you tell them?
I mean, obviously, the number one thing is Evolve security. I mean, I really like I owe a lot to Evolve. Appreciate that, Dan. I really owe a lot to Evolve for that. But there's a ton of resources out there to help veterans. Like I used during that time I used VA funding to attend Evolve. So there's organizations like it's all coming from federal funding, but Vet Tech for one, they provide funding for security boot camps. I know there's a lot in the pipeline for like apprenticeship type programs that will help. One is if anybody is involved with vocational rehab through the VA, I am pretty positive you can get them to help pay for some of this tuition as well. Another great resource is Onward to Opportunity. It's the name of the program. And Onward to Opportunity, they have a whole list of a few like certifications, mostly IT related certifications, some project management certification, and it's through IVMF. I don't know what that acronym means. I can't remember. I'll have to Google it here, but it's through IVMF, but they'll help cover the cost of like one certification while providing like IT Pro TV subscription to help you study through that. And that was helpful as well. because I did try to supplement a lot of my lack of experience in the beginning with certifications.
Right.
But ultimately, it's just finding that first job. It's so important.
Yep, 100%. Well, thank you so much, Cody, for providing all that information and taking the time to share your journey with us. It's extremely inspiring, and we're excited to learn a little bit more from you today with the lab. So it's time for you to just take over, and everyone, we're going to start the lab. And so make sure that you're logged into CyberLAB and add that free course, and Cody will take it from there.
All right. Thank you so much. All right. I would have liked to do this with crayon for the Marines, but unfortunately I could not. Can't draw this out in paint, but I will be attacking this in true infantry way and just diving headfirst into this. Everybody can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Awesome. Fantastic. So we will go ahead and get started with this. Do we need to give it a minute for everybody to get their boxes going, or would we like to get rolling?
Eddie, are we good to go?
Oh, yep. Sorry, we're good to go. I was checking on questions and we are fine. Apologize.
All good.
Okay. And I am sorry if I missed some questions, but I'm sure Eddie
Nothing yet, Cody. We're all good to go.
Colleen will relay it to me. All right. So we are going over Hakuna Matata today, and means no worries. And this is about a Windows privilege escalation. So the goal of privilege escalation is to gain a shell running as an admin or system user. So it's taking in like an unauthorized user and accessing services or applications that they aren't normally able to access. All of privilege escalation ultimately boils down to access control violations. And everything we cover today will be some sort of variation of an access control violation. So privilege escalation, and we'll kind of cover the lab. We're not going to read it word for word here, but there's a few points that I think are important. There's two forms of privilege escalation. One of them actually being vertical privilege escalation, which is the one that we most commonly think of and the one we most commonly strive for. And that's actually reaching that tier up. So let's say we're just a local user that's reaching out to like that administrative or that system user. And then you have horizontal privilege escalation, and that's more of a lateral movement. So that might be me in finance, like reaching out over to maybe IT. We have some different access to services, but it's not necessarily a privilege escalation. And please zoom out a little bit. Are we talking about on the screen here? And if you're referring to this on the right, we're actually not going to take a look at that. I'll be switching back and forth between the desktop here and the CyberLAB here when we go through this. All right, so the lab goals of today are going to be to just get through a couple actual privilege escalation exploits. Walk through a couple methods. I think there's at least 4 that we hope to get through today with this time. All right, we are going to go ahead and start, and let me give you some tips on this. When you start this box, the settings tab here, you can see your IPs for Hakuna Matata is going to be the Windows machine. You won't ever actually have to open anything for that. The Linux one, I'd recommend clicking on desktop. And then if you see this little arrow here, this box to pop it out, that way you can copy and paste. Very important for this because there's going to be a lot of type. I would also like to mention that your root password is going to be CyberLAB and then your last name backwards. Like for example, mine would be CyberLAB Yadoc. That makes sense. So anytime you may need that, that will be your password. So we're going to jump down into the lab. So the first thing we see in the start of this is our username and password for RDP. Once both of your machines are up, There's some network enumeration we're going to pass for now. We'll do a lot more enumeration in actual system user services and internal network. But as far as external network, we've got what we need. We're taking an assumed approach here. Like this isn't initial access to privilege escalation. We're just trying to hit more privilege escalation. So here we have our username and password. I recommend X3RDP because I've had a lot more luck with this actually copy and pasting in. And you'll see that you'll use your local user, if that's your username, the IP address, and dynamic resolution helps you change the screen size for this. The keyboard shortcuts, lifesavers. So Alt, Control, and T in full size will open up your terminal. And then luckily for me, I've typed this out before, but you can copy and paste this. Let me hit up one more thing actually that I've changed to make my life a little easier. So if you sudo nano into etc hosts, this is where your like some DNS type records are stored. So you'll see I have the IP of my box with the name target in there. So we'll pop back over here. And you see I have a Hakuna Matata. So I will not remember that. I'll have to check that IP a billion times while we're doing that. So if you add it right below localhost is an IP and target name, you can just reference it as that.
Cody, would you mind doing us a favor? If you could increase the font size on your terminal next time you open one for us, just must have a nice large screen.
Oh, is it really like, okay. Let me see if we can zoom in because the traditional enlargement methods don't seem to be working well here. There we go. Feel like, how's that looking?
It's just beautiful.
All right. Thanks for the help. All right. So we will go over that real quick again. So you're sudoing into the etc host because you do need an elevated privilege to edit that. And then, of course, I can't type. And then right below localhost, I added Hakuna Matata's IP, and then I'm calling it target. You can call it whatever you'd like, but that is for this initial RDP connection, which we're using X3RDP with the username, local user, and then V is the target. So this is where your IP would going if you didn't add anything to the host. And then dynamic resolution is going to, it's going to help you be able to adjust when the RDP screen session. Your password is make, capital M in me, capital A is an admin, the number sign, hashtag 31337. And I'm actually kind of surprised I got that right first try. Unfortunately, I've had some trouble actually getting the Windows terminals to zoom in though. We will see how this looks and maybe I'll have to move it to a smaller screen for you. But now that we are here, we're in one of the first things we're going to want to do is some normal system enumeration. And we can do this through the command prompt here. There's quite a few different commands and tools we can use to do this, but we'll kind of follow the lab here for a little bit. One of the main ones here, system info. This is great, and you can see if you can pipe this out into a text file to save for later, which we will use at the end of the lab, or at least use this text. So it's definitely worth looking at. I already have it saved somewhere else, so I'm just going to go ahead and load this up. And so what we get out of system info, hopefully we're not getting any real good zooming in here. How is it legible? Anybody, can one of the hosts or panelists tell me if you can read?
So a tad small.
So I did try this earlier. The control plus, control scroll doesn't seem to work in with this. Oh no, Roger, I'm sorry. Let's see if we can figure out a way to
Someone
do it.
says left click, there you go, and properties. And then I believe in PowerShell, it's under the font or size. That's
Oh, there we go.
beautiful.
That's what I'm talking about. See,
36 will be massive.
yeah,
20 to 24 is perfect.
we'll try 24. How we look? Oh, it's Jason. Nice, glad to have you here, Jason. All right, how's this looking?
Looks good for me. I think we're
Okay,
fine.
fantastic. So let me know, Chad, if you need anything else. But some important things that we are going to notice here is, for one, we're working with Windows 10. We see that there. We want to see versioning. We get all of that here in system info. And one thing I find very important is hotfixes, because these hotfixes are directly related to security vulnerabilities that have been patched a lot of times. So we will be able to, we can check and see if we have an idea of what vulnerability we may be trying to exploit. We can see if any of these hot fixes have already patched that and see if it's vulnerable. Maybe save ourselves some time later on. We will be visiting some enumeration again. So we're gonna take a look back at this in a little bit. We'll continue with the lab a little bit here. Here's some more system enumeration commands that we start off with is host name. We can take a look at that. By the way, CLS will clear your screen. You take a look at host name. Makes sense. Now we have some user enumeration here with the net user command. And that tells us we have an admin user on here, administrator, default account, guest, local user. This is us. We're learning a little bit more here. All of this adds up later, because that's the thing with privilege escalation. It's oftentimes not like a simple, like, use this exploit, run this exploit. Just as in like the military as in recon, I'd spend days up on a mountain, staring at an objective for maybe 15 minutes worth of actionable objectives, or maybe even less. If it's just like we were up there with a sniper team, you might be there for days for one shot. And that's very similar to how this kind of enumeration works. As far as displaying all the available network interfaces and routing tables, I mean, it's good to see what kind of network you're in. So don't mind me. I'm pretty bad at typing sometimes. All right, so here we can see if there's more than one network adapter. Is this system tied in anywhere else? Then we might think about other lateral privilege escalation vectors. Then it all depends. But here we see that we're mostly concerned with just this system, but this information is here if we need it. Taking a look, there's nothing that obviously stands out that makes me want to check another network or anything here at that point. We're gonna a couple of these for now. Scheduled task is very important. This will be a very long output, and we kind of dive into some of this here a little bit later. So the SC command is very important when it comes to privilege escalation. Like being able to speak to services is essential, especially when we start talking about actual like service misconfigurations. They will not work unless you can restart the service, either through like actually stopping and starting it or restarting the system. We'll go ahead and take a, this is also something that I like to do here because I make mistakes here all the time. I oftentimes like to set this in another workspace, but we'll take a look. Appears like we lost our connection here. All right. Well, Hakuna Matata went down, so we'll come back to that, and we'll talk about some of this other stuff while we start this up. So this is views and services installed on hosts. We are going to do this in some other ways too. One tool that we're going to try here in a minute is called WinPeas, and it does a lot of this like enumeration automatically. So it runs some scripts and color codes everything because I like colors. So it will color code a lot of the things. You look for red, and it gives you some ideas to investigate a little bit further. So WMIC calls, and this one is really interesting because I learned a lot about it at my last job. Is we have a lot of rules written for like log analysis engines that monitor suspicious Windows management information command line logs. And this link we will go over while this is. All right, I'm gonna refresh this whole page real quick. All right. And here,
Cody, real quick, your lab timed out. I got to start and pray on the back end, buddy.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
So we get for testing ahead of time, right?
I was thinking about adding the 7 P's to success in here somewhere. So here in I already lost my train of thought. So this is payloads, all the things. So here they have some quick commands like WMIC. It extracts all the patches and updates. So it's a quick WMIC QFE. You can find out what patches it had, what update, kind of like that system info, but just that specific information that you're looking for. You can list all environmental variables. There's user enumeration, a lot of good kind of one-liners here. And that is linked in there. I think we should be good. These start up pretty fast. We're going to close this. All right. One thing we will probably have to do again real quick is when you add, okay, never mind. That didn't shut down. It was just the Windows one. When you add a name to this file, it is going to be temporary. All right, we're getting back in this here. Throwing some challenge at us. I'm gonna try 30. I'm gonna try 28 this time. Okay. We don't want to check email. I don't know how many times I've done that. Okay. We are getting back on it. Now we are going to start talking about our payload. I don't know how many of you are already familiar with MSF Venom. A significant purpose of MSF Venom is exactly this, is to help generate that payload that we can upload in the command line to help create a shell or some sort. There are a few ways we can go about getting to the payload we're looking for. Lucky for us, they already told us which one we need. And this is what I'm talking about. I'm going to move this to another workspace so I don't close it on accident. And you'll see it over there. And then here, I'm just going to close that. That's another terminal here. And I'm going to keep one terminal always on top. That way I don't lose it. I'm gonna get up here. So one thing, MSF Venom, so you can see it right here. This is it. I've already done this, so we can see this. So MSF Venom, we're making a call to MSF Venom right here. And -P is the payload we're asking for. And we want the Windows x64, and all this is stuff that we have seen in the previous enumeration. We know it's an x64 system, and we're going for a reverse TCP shell. And this is our local host. So this is our listening host and the port we want it to run on. we want to create an executable named payload2.exe. And part of this was because I was trying it on other payloads. Don't be afraid to fail on some things. Like just practice, try and figure out why things don't work. The first time I did this lab, I didn't really follow the instructions. I'm hard-headed sometimes and wanted to figure it out on my own. So we will go back there and we'll revisit MSF Venom. So you can see here that this L host, you want to make sure that you remove all of this, and all of that is the IP. Space, L port, you can choose whatever port you want. 4444 just seems to be the standard, so it's just kind of ingrained in me. So we are going to go ahead and generate that anyway. And we're going to open up another shell as well. We didn't encode this at all. There are other features that MSF Venom is such a powerful tool, and I think it could use an hour of its own time because it is very, very good. All right, so we have our payload is payload2.exe. So now from here, we want to figure out how to get it onto our Windows machine, because we've already, I'm assuming, enumerated this username and password, maybe from a password dump. We found out that they had RDP access to this machine. So now we're in as a local user. We've created a payload. Now let's get this payload that's going to reach out back to us, because it's going to be really hard to try and open a port on 4444 from the outside coming in. Not as hard from the inside coming out. There are obfuscation ways we could do, like, you see a lot of times this happening over like port 53 or 443. But we will go ahead and create this Python server for Linux. And this will serve from whatever directory we're in. So we're gonna, since it's right here, we are going to go ahead and start it here. You can see that I did some of that up. That -m is just a module. So we're saying, hey, Python 3, grab module HTTP server. 31337 is just the port we're running it on. So you can see we're serving it there. And then if we hop back over here, yeah, catch up on my notes here. So this one is the same. It's kind of a complicated command line here, but it's essentially the same as if you were to go to that IP address and that path from your browser. You would just download it to your downloads folder. So here we're just making a web request to this IP, and we're going to download payload 2 actually. And since I already have a payload 2 here, I'm going to call it payload 3. And this is going to be right here in this local user. And we can verify by checking the directory. You see we have payload 2 and payload 3 here. Is everybody's Linux machine catching up? I want to make sure we have some time to get through this, but I also want you guys to be able to participate as well. We're going to keep going, but if a couple people could mention in chat if they're able to follow along, I'd appreciate it. So now that we have, we're at step 12. We've already uploaded our MSF Venom payload, so it's going to be reaching out back to us. And now, this is going to be a reoccurring theme here. Access check. This is, and Colleen brings up a great point. Access check is definitely going to be used heavily during this lab, and what a great tool. We're going to use it to just verify we can do everything we need to do. And you'll see it quite a bit here pretty soon. It's already available. One thing to add though is about the new access check. It does require, it has like a pop-up you have to confirm. So we're using an older version, and you can see this accept end user license agreement. That is just telling it like you don't have to click this pop-up, which is very nice. So we're going to start with insecure file permissions, but before we do that, we're going to do one more step of enumeration, because we've got this on here. We've got our payload, but we don't really know where to go without the lab telling us. And we could do some deeper manual enumeration, but we're kind of crunched on time here. So we are going to run WinPs. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with WinPs, but it's an automated color coded, and we can add a -H, because if you just run WinPs by itself, you are going to get an insane amount of output. So right now, we are interested in services info because it sounded like in the lab, that's what's coming up. So we are going to see that flag here for WinPs, and it's called services info. So we're going to say in this directory, run winps.exe services info. Sometimes my brain gets the processes faster than I can understand it. And so here, it's a lot, especially if you haven't looked at anything like this before. And that's where the color coding comes in nice. We're going to make this full screen for you. And we know here's the start next to our P's. Right here, this is one of the most important things to us. Red indicates a special privilege over an object or something that is misconfigured. And so we can do some quick scrolling, and we can take a look like, well, this MCU server, that looks interesting. Photo SVC, maybe we'll run into some of these. Taking a view here, and then we have modifiable services, things you can change. You can modify registries in Photo SVC. That is something that's definitely interesting. Let's take a look at the lab though and see maybe where they wanted to go, because we actually, I might have jumped ahead of myself. And we are going to take a look at WinPs again. So that is the services one. So we enumerated all the potential vectors for services privilege escalation. So right now, if we were to go back to the winps.exe-h and see what other options we have. Sometimes don't mind me. I'm a Linux user. Okay, so we also have files info, and I misspoke. The first one looks like it's an insecure files permission. So let's run that same thing with files info and see if we can find anything there. Oh, it looks like there's a few things here that are definitely interesting. And then we'll jump back over to the lab and see exactly which one they're talking about. So while enumerating, excuse me, I misspoke again. So there's a service called BattleNet installed in program files, and there's a public exploit, and this is a legitimate public exploit. This is real. No, WinPs is not already on the machine. I put it on here to really show you guys more of an enumeration process. The lab kind of tells you where to go. I just wanted to demonstrate WinPs. So we're going to go ahead and run with this real quick. So what we're going to start doing is, let's say we found this BattleNet program files, and we want to confirm that we can actually modify. Like I said, you have to be able to start or stop any kind of services in order to get this to work. So we are going to, this is like a manual check from what WinPs kind of does as well. So this access check, accepting the EULA, QUV is all just suppressing a bunch of stuff. It's not super important. That W means we're looking for writable, and then that path that we're looking for it in. So we're going to pop back over here to the RDP here. And then you have to be in the folder. So let me show you my way around this. So I like to just paste this in here. I'll hit home to go back to the beginning. We'll get our / in there. And then we'll just drag and drop this tools folder here. Saves us the time from typing or copying, pasting, all of that. And here we can see that it's a golden ticket. Look at it, file, all access. We write everyone. It's exactly what we want to see, exactly what we were hoping for. So you can see in here, they mentioned that same thing. That's all access. It's good for us, but not good for system security. Traditionally, you do want to create a backup of this file because you don't want to leave any traces behind. You want to get your privilege escalation, replace the file with the original. We're gonna skip that from now. I know you train like you fight, but also want to get to a couple of these so we get some good experience and maybe revisit some WinPs at the end if we have time. All right, so now we have seen that we have access to this. What we are going to do now is we're going to replace this executable with our payload. So when you try to start that executable, it's actually going to start. It's actually going to run our payload. So you can see it's going to copy the payload into that executable. So we do have to be in the directory where our payload is. You can tell Shift-Control-V, use the Linux. But again, mine is payload 2 or 3. And then we will see, going to ask you to overwrite. You can also add a flag in a command line if you don't. And that is perfect. Looks like that file copied successfully. You want to come back over here. The old netcat NVLP 4444. I mean, that is a classic. So we have our netcat listener. Now all we have to do is start the service. And if you remember, we talked about early on, some of the enumeration is like listing user accounts. It's also used to start and stop services. So we are going to net start this BattleNet service. So this guy or girl who happened to try to play World of Warcraft on their work computer is going to leverage a shell for us. We are going to zoom in here. So you can see, and netcat was listening on 4444. Our payload fired off as soon as we started that service because we replaced our payload with this battlenet.exe. And so we went from listening, we got that connection from Hakuna Matata, and you can see it's Microsoft Windows. And then a little bit, it all goes back to enumeration. Who are we? We are the NT authority system. That's exactly who we want. Next thing, we go to Amazon, we get ourselves some Guy Fawkes masks, maybe an anonymous tattoo. You never know. Possibilities are endless from here. Now, we want to look for the flag. The whole point of having privileges like this is we want to be able to access stuff we normally couldn't. So let's try to find, let's go to users, admin, and desktop. Well, that doesn't exist and I can't use that. So we're going to cd into user, admin, desktop. All right, we are here. We're going to take a look. What do we got in here? Look at that. Flag.txt. We are there. We are there. So here it's not, we can't cat it, unfortunately. Type works. Type flag.txt. We did it. We did it. So here is our flag. And copy that. Pop on over here. Look at that. Champions. All right. And that, just to recap real quick. So that was insecure file permissions. And that's because that file, again, it all comes down to access control because that file let this user change, modify it. So I was able to replace that file with our payload. And they all these file permissions have that similar thing going on. And we will jump down to tier 2. And I really like these ones. But the caveat is being able to start and stop the services is huge. So we'll jump into this one. So it mentions that a Windows operating system contains a lot of startup programs, and the registry is very important. Oh, thank you, Scott. You are absolutely right. Absolutely right. So here, the registry is very important. It contains all the information and keys specific to registered service and startup applications. The key values it stores keeps Windows running. It's very sensitive stuff in there. And such as the binary that will run in startup. So again, similar to the other one, weak permissions to modify an application and access the restart can lead to privilege escalation. So we actually did see this in one of our first WinPs that we ran in the services. Let me pop back over here because I did, let me check over here. I saved this on servicesinfo.txt. So we're gonna type servicesinfo.txt. So now these are things that might be vulnerable again. And I know we saw this autoplay.exe in one of these. I just wanted to confirm. Here, oh, that service is stopped, but it is listed there. It might have actually been in the other one. You know, and I can feel myself rushing through enumeration, and that is definitely not what you traditionally want to do. Enumeration should be, like I was saying, like 90% of this is enumeration. You're not actually squeezing that trigger, firing that exploit until your enumeration is spot on, until that information you have is great. And if any of you worked in intelligence, I'm disappointed because we've gotten some bad intel. But we're going to go ahead and take a look at one of the other files that we might have had here. Let's check out the dir. We have services info. Check the app info.txt here. Type app. Yeah, and there's a lot going on here, a lot to really see. Look at this, we found it. File permissions, everyone, all access for autoplay.exe. All right, so we think we have an avenue. We will go ahead and we want to, trust but verify. Classic saying as well. So access check right here. We're gonna do this in reverse real quick, because this is actually another very good command to see if this is possible. So right here, this command is querying the registry to see which applications are configured to run on startup. So we will go ahead and stop that. And you can see in here, we have security has, so we have how all these applications are configured to run on startup. And right here, we have the one we are interested in, that autoplay.exe. It's twice now we've confirmed it. That's perfect. Hey, Sean, have you popped it out into a full screen? If you're working with it side by side, copying is a real pain. And it doesn't always work the best. All right. So we've queried it, we've verified, and now we're going to go to access check again. So remember, access check, we're skipping that end user license agreement. And then we are looking at that path. And what do we hope to see here? We did it again. All right, we'll only do this 4 more times. But the old drag and drop, come in for the win. And here we have the same thing, file all access. It looks like we're doing great. This is great news for us, but again, not so great news for them. So we have verified that this is absolutely vulnerable to this. So as in the previous part, we have all access rights to this executable. All we need to do is replace the autoplay executable with a reverse shell file named autoplay.exe. So that is going to, let me drop down here. Getting ahead of, okay. Here, we're not going to make a copy of it. So we are going to copy payload2.exe. That's in our current directory. And then we're going to copy that to C program files autoplay.exe, because that is where that binary is pointing to for autoplay.exe. So we want to say yes. We want to overwrite it. Yes. Yes, we want to overwrite it. So you see one file copied. It's actually asking me to overwrite it because I never changed it back. And this one, because it's on auto run, this one we're not just restarting and stopping the service. We actually have to restart the machine here. So now that we've got it running, one very important step that we don't want to miss is resetting up our listener, because then we won't hear anything. Can't catch anything if we're not listening. All right, so we verified that our payload is now copied into there. So we're going to go ahead, not restart my actual computer here. Make sure that we just restart this Windows instance. If you have it full screen, sometimes it can be hard to tell. So make sure you're restarting the correct instance here. And this one I mentioned, you can also wait till the end of the lab to restart it. And it's actually very quick to restart. And once we RDP back in, we can see that shell pop. And that is actually the same flag, believe it or not, because it's in the same directory. So we're just gonna pop that in there. We're on track now. Now we got our Guy Fawkes mask. We're getting a black hoodie. Amazon, here we come. Go ahead and take a look at this. All right, we will bring up another Alt-Control-T, bring up another terminal. We've already typed it in, so we can just auto complete everything. Password first time, that's a huge success. So we will have to wait a minute here. And there's another caveat to this specific exploit kind of and it's hard to replicate for our situation. And this is really applicable to Windows 10. So you see it here, it rebooted. That means that service restarted, and on that auto restart, boom, it reached out, our payload fired off, we caught that shell. However, there is one problem with this privilege escalation on Windows 10, and that is whatever user was last logged in, it will often give you those permissions. So in a case like this, we would also need that last user to log in to be an admin. And this is only like a Windows 10 thing as far as I know. So we still catch the shell. We still were able to replace that. But unfortunately, for it to really fire, the last person to log into that machine would need to be an admin for us to get that to fire off as an admin service. But it's still a very good example of how we can replace that path in that auto run, and then boom, restart it, or next time it's restarted, it just, whoever was logged in last, it runs off that service. And that's 2 down. Hoodies and Guy Fawkes masks. I mean, I don't know where we send our application to. Anonymous, maybe LinkedIn. All right, now we're getting a little bit deeper into the registry here. And I really like Windows Privilege Escalation here. It's interesting how this comes together and how it is actually kind of vulnerability. Unquoted service paths is probably one of my favorite, just because of the way that Windows interprets these service paths as spaces. It checks every single like space basically as its own program. Like, does it exist here? Its own directory, excuse me. All right, so we're gonna go back to talking about insecure registry services.
And Cody, just doing a quick time check. We have about 5-ish minutes left, but just wrap up whatever you need.
I am so sorry. I've been looking down at the time down here and it says 10:29. I was like, well, yeah, 30 minutes left. Well,
No worries.
all right, so we will talk about this real quick, but we may not quite dive into it. It'll be a really good one for you guys to kind of practice on your own now that we've gone through 2 of them. Like I was saying, all of these are essentially the same type. Like, it's all broken access controls of some sort. So in here, if you look at this, we talk about access check again, and we're really referring to another registry key here that we start mentioning. And here we're not changing necessarily the file, we're changing the file path. So it's slightly different, but then again, we still need that restarting of that stop and restart of that service here. We might be able to power through it real quick, and then just so you guys can see it one time and maybe 2 minutes, and then we're gonna start a listener here. You guys can see it for 2 minutes and then try it on your own. Luckily for me, I have. So if a user if a user has permission to change the path on the registry, then an attacker can overwrite that image path registry key to point the R executable, with the point that executable to ours. I know it can get kind of confusing to follow. We saw this service, this photo SBC. I'm sorry, I don't have this up. We saw this photo SBC already in WinPeas, so we're just going to at least hit a couple of these. I'm sorry if we're going over a little bit. Let me hit that. Just at least look at this, because I wanted to show at least this part. So here we can see this demand start. That means you need to tell it to start. It doesn't auto start on its own. And then this local system down here is another huge part to us, because that means it will be run as the local system administrator. So those are 2 things that we absolutely want to see. And if anybody can guess the next thing we need to add or check, and access check, of course. We'll run through that real quick. It's basically the same here. Ooh, it got me 3 times in a row. You can tell we're gonna go home here, and we'll drag and drop the tools onto here. We'll run access check. We might be firing things off too fast here. I just wanted to get you all in a good position to know that this is okay, perfect. Boom. We know that everyone can start and stop this service. Everything lines up. I think that's actually where we'll leave off then. We won't actually continue with the exploit. We know from what we've just checked, though, that it is vulnerable. If we do have the permissions to start and stop the service, and once we do, it will run as root. So that will actually be a really good one to start there. And oh, no problem, Sean. That leaves 2 of them to do on your own. And we've also seen this service here in WinPeas. So one quick suggestion before I pass it back off to Colleen. Somebody posted it in this chat. If they could maybe throw it again, the link to WinPeas. If you download that on your Linux box and upload it the same way you did our payload, you can run WinPeas and get that colored version. But with that, I won't take any more of your time. I'll pass it back off to Colleen.
Thank you so much, Cody. And as a reminder to everyone, you do have access to the lab for the next 24 hours. And directly following this, I will be sending out an email to everyone with the recording of the event. So you can go back and refresh if you need to, if you're coming back to the lab later on. But Cody, thank you so much for taking the time to share your story with us and walk everyone through the lab. It's been a great event. And we'll have another lab walkthrough meetup coming up in December, everyone. So keep an eye out for that. Other than that, thank you everyone for coming again, and have a great rest of your day and a happy Thanksgiving.